This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
I think there's a tendency by podcasters to cover a lot of the same cases, so we try and have a new angle on the things that we cover. And, it gets to be, there's a lot of work that goes into producing an episode pretty much every single week. And we don't take a lot of weeks off from that, even though we're doing other things. With this time of year, you've got Halloween and all the scary movies that you can watch. Lots of new true crime documentaries, and I'm already in that realm as both a fan and my other work involves writing scary things and producing scary things. But there comes a point in time where you can only do so much rape, murder. And so the stuff that I've tried to do in what I would guess would be our off time, when we don't, really have a main idea. I'm one of those people where if I screw up on something, I'll eventually admit it. I try to own it. But in our off time here, I don't think it's a screw up to cover cases that sort of fly by, and there's so many DNA related cases and murder cases and missing persons cases that are getting a lot of big attention. Some of these cases that I grab onto, they're smaller cases that are sort of a headline for a minute, and really there's more to it if you look underneath. And I like doing those. I particularly like it when it gives me a little bit of a break from the killing side of things, because it gets very dark and very deep to constantly immerse yourself into the more horrible things that human beings do to other human beings. So this is a lighter episode on purpose, because we'll be back to the murder in no time. And what we have planned sort of picking up after Halloween is it's what we get into these series of murders where there's really nobody looking into them, but they get the first series after Halloween will be this series of murders that got a big flash of attention and then nothing happened. And we wanted to dig into that, so we've been doing that since we were already digging around in Louisiana. So unfortunately, in this episode, there is no rape, there is no murder, and there's no missing people.
This week, I don't even know, do you read the news regularly, other than true crime?
I don't even read true crime news. I get it all from you.
This was one of the more interesting things I've seen. So early October, a case starts unveiling against a Navy engineer in the United States and his wife. So it's a guy named Jonathan and his wife Diana, and I can't say his last name. It's Toebbe, Tobe,
I think.
So Jonathan Tobe is accused of passing on design information about sophisticated Virginia-class submarines to someone he thought represented a foreign government. But in actuality, this person was an undercover FBI agent. And he reached out to this foreign country in April of 2020, and he was offering up information about submarines, and he provided instructions on how to maintain a furtive dialogue. So I had to actually, reading this, I had to go...
What was that word you used?
Furtive. I had to go look things up related to this. Furtive, Furtive. I actually, it's all written very bizarrely.
It is. It's really weird.
Furtive means to keep it secret because I'll get in trouble. That's what it means.
Oh, I don't know if I shared it with you. Did you read the warrants? The write-up to get... Did you read up the write-ups for the warrants?
That is why we're here. Is that you're talking about the government documents related to the criminal complaint?
I believe so, yeah.
I did end up reading all 25 or 26 pages of the criminal complaint. What stood out to you?
The ridiculousness of it, basically. Because it hasn't, like, it's all quoted, right?
Right.
And I actually now I don't know what I got from the article versus what I got from the the criminal complaint, right? And there's 24 pages.
Yeah.
But reading it, like, I was laughing. It's a laughable. It is serious, but like the ridiculousness of it's interesting. And you know what actually caught my attention the most was that he initially asked for $100,000 as a show of good faith, and they gave him 10.
Yeah.
That's a whole, like, plate.
When you get into national security, so first of all, national security, restricted data, confidential data, top secret data, you literally get into an area that even the people enforcing the laws don't completely understand. The documents related to this are basically this one FBI special agent swearing out a criminal complaint alleging a violation of the Atomic Energy Act. So that's what the charge is. The charge is violating the Atomic Energy Act. And on my best day, I could not imagine waking up and someone saying that I'd violated the Atomic Energy Act.
Right. And so what that says is the Atomic Energy Act prohibits inter alia individuals who have possession of, access to, control over, or are entrusted with any document, writing, sketch, photograph, plan, model, instrument, appliance, note, or information involving or incorporating restricted data from communicating, transmitting, or disclosing it to any individual or person, or attempting or conspiring to do so with the intent to injure the United States or to secure an advantage to any foreign nation. Now, right on its face, what does anything stand out?
From what you just said?
Well, I just read, like, the act, basically.
Yeah, no. I mean,
I can tell you what I see immediately. What I see immediately is, from that, I dug further because I couldn't figure out if, like how does this even start, right? So Jonathan Tubb, he reaches out to the government of this other country, and he tells them to give the information to their military intelligence unit or something like that. Right. And they turn around and give it to the United States. They give it back to the United States. Okay. Now, so the parts of the act that I find relevant is it requires the intent to injure the United States or to secure an advantage to any foreign nation. Okay. I would argue immediately that because the country gave it back to the United States and let them know what was happening, that it wasn't an advantage to the foreign nation, and that just because somebody else has technology doesn't mean it's necessarily going to injure the United States, or that he intended to injure the United States. Now,
they made copies. They were like, "Yeah, we're gonna send this back."
But there's nothing wrong with multiple countries having the same submarine or the information about the submarines. But the counterpoint of that would be that he realizes that he's doing something wrong. And so that sucks, because that's going to be really hard to overcome.
Yeah, it's the intent, though, is that he wants money. And so what they're going to argue here is that he knew what he was doing was wrong. That's why they're so specific, saying that he used furtive language. And his literal translation, among other things, says, "I apologize for this poor translation into your language. Please forward this letter to your military intelligence agency. I believe this information will be of great value to your nation. This is not a hoax." So, okay, first of all, the FBI's attaché, which is LEGAT, in the country, which is not identified in here, they obtained a package from Country One that representatives in their country had received in April of 2020 through a mail carrier from the United States by an unidentified subject who was attempting to establish a covert relationship. They're all very careful with this language, by the way. The package contained U.S. Navy documents, a letter containing instructions, and an SD card containing specific instructions on how, in the document it's identified as Country One, should respond using an encrypted communication platform and additional documents. In the letter, the sender stated a desire to sell documents containing U.S. Navy information marked confidential that included printouts, digital media files containing technical details, operations manuals, and performance reports. The letter requested the transmission of the enclosed technical data be delivered to the Country One's military intelligence agency, which that's when that quote comes in. The package that contained the material described was in a brown envelope with 4 U.S. postage stamps, a postal barcode, and a sent date of April 1st, 2020. I would argue right there, it was an April Fool's joke. The return address was identified as a location in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So the FBI gets this information through their legal attaché, their LEGAT. Basically, they're informed by a subject matter expert at the U.S. Navy with knowledge of the documents included in the package that these documents are U.S. government issued documents containing restricted data. And the restricted data, it's spelled out you read the Atomic Energy Act. Basically, they had somebody look at it, and that guy says, this is restricted data. On December 23rd, the FBI analyzed the encryption keys that were in the SD card. There were 3 keys located on the card. Alice Hill with a public key, Bob Burns with a private key, and a Proton Mail public key. In cryptography, Alice and Bob are commonly used as placeholders in discussions about cryptographic protocols or systems. The FBI noted that the public key for Alice Hill had 2 subkeys, and the first subkey was used to sign and certify. Same thing with Bob Burns. It had 2 subkeys. The first key was to sign and certify. The second key was for encryption. They're able to take the SD card, which has been returned to them, and they're able to connect it to a computer with a particular Mac operating system. Basically, they could figure out that it was Mac OS. So the FBI does what, good FBI agents would do, and they put in poor translations responding back to him saying, we received your letter. We want to work with you. It's been many months, so we need to know if you're still there. Respond to this message, and we'll provide instruction on how to proceed. And that was on December 26th of 2020.
So it took from April until December.
Right.
And so that involved whomever he initially reached out to.
Right.
Getting back to whoever, would eventually do something about it here. And so that's how much time it took, right? I feel like it probably really just took that long for somebody to, this is, because they were like, oh, what is this? And they're like, oh, it has something to do with the United States. Let's just give it back to them. Because all of that you read, and then they had to figure out what the guy was saying because he goes beyond ridiculous in his covertness, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why he was trying to wipe his electronic footprint so intensely when they were just going to hand it to them anyway.
Yeah, that's it's so weird because he gave the FBI a direct line to him by doing that.
Well, he even says you might not be who I think you are.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
He knows.
It's like he's getting catfished. Yeah,
so the chain of events happens like this. On February 10th of this year, 2021, responding to the message from December 26th of 2020, the Alice key responds and states, thank you for contacting me. I'm still here. The COVID disease has made it more difficult to find chances to check this email. Let us discuss how to proceed. So then 2 weeks later, on February 24th, an FBI agent who is acting in an undercover capacity over the internet, He responds and states, "We understand the delay. We hope you're well. Our experts review the information. We would like as a sample a specific section of U.S. Navy's information. We have a trusted friend in your country who has a gift for you to compensate your efforts." So March 5th, Alice, for the purpose of this conversation, the FBI is acting as Bob and Jonathan is acting as Alice, and that's for the purpose of the keys being able to talk to each other. Basically, each side of this is encrypted, but they're able to talk to each other directly. And Alice responds and says just what you said. "I'm uncomfortable with this arrangement. Face-to-face meetings are very risky for me, as I'm sure you understand. I propose exchanging gifts electronically for mutual safety. I can upload documents to a secure cloud storage account encrypted with the key I provided you. You can send me a suitable gift in Monero cryptocurrency to an address I'll provide. $100,000 should be enough to understand this is a large request. However, please remember I'm risking my life for your benefit, and I've taken the first step. Please help me trust you fully." So Monero is a cryptocurrency. It's decentralized, and it uses a publicly distributed ledger, but it has privacy-enhancing technologies to make it a little more anonymous than like Bitcoin per se. March 18th, 2021, the undercover posing as a representative of Country One wrote, "We understand if face-to-face meeting is uncomfortable, we suggest a neutral drop location. When you visit the location alone, you retrieve a gift and leave behind the sample we request." And then the sample, they mark something in there. But it's not shown in the criminal complaint. "We hope to have a very long friendship that benefits mutually."
Then it starts to get a little more serious, and the response,
"I am concerned that using a dead drop location your friend prepares makes me vulnerable. If other parties are observing the location, I will be unable to detect them. I'm not a professional. I do not have a team supporting me. I'm also concerned that a physical gift will be very difficult to explain if I'm questioned. For now, I must consider the possibility that you are not the person I hope you are. It would be very easy for the serial numbers of bills to be recorded. Tracking devices and other nasty surprises must be considered as well. I propose to modify your plan in the following way." And then he gets a little wordy. "1, I will place the sample you requested on a memory card and place it in a drop location of my choosing. I'm not a professional, and I am sure that publicly available information on this subject is incomplete. 2, the samples will be generated using GNUPG symmetric encryption with a randomly generated passphrase."
so then he's going to tell them where to find the card, and he's going to give them a Monero address.
"I'm very aware of the risk of blockchain analysts of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies and believe Monero gives us both excellent deniability. 4, once I confirm receipt of my gift, I will give you the passphrase. Your friend and I will never go to the same drop location twice. I will give you a new Monero address each time, and the decryption key will be different each time. No patterns for third parties to observe. The only fingerprints will be proton to proton, so there is less risk of encrypted traffic being collected for future analysts of third parties. By third parties. That part's not perfect. Perhaps as our friendship develops, we change addresses periodically." So then on April 1st of 2021, now it's a full year, the undercover responds, also on April Fool's Day, "We understand your concern and appreciate the thoughtful plan as a sign of good faith. We wish to pay you the equivalent of $10,000 immediately on Monero to the address you provide. Drop locations are safe and leave no electronic footprint. Your proposed method of memory card encryption passphrases is acceptable. For the small sample we requested, you will receive another $20,000. Once you confirm the Monero address, we will activate payment. Our next step will be information on drop location we've received. This method will build trust between us for a far larger transaction in the future. Our experts are interested in information that you have, but we insist on maintaining our discretion and our security as a priority." What's insane about that is that basically, for the exact reasons he suspects, they are the FBI.
Well, right. And
they cheap out on him too, which is what he says. He thought he would know it was the FBI because they cheap out on him.
but he can tell you.
But he does it anyway. So
this is a good example of why one wouldn't do this.
Yes, it is absolutely. It becomes a signal operation at this point. Like, for the people who might not understand what that means, is the FBI creates a task force at this point and probably has the NSA and other resources involved that I won't
go deep into here, where this guy's under surveillance at this point, at least electronically. They're trying to figure out who this is. But, okay.
No, they set up a dead drop and he shows his ass up. There's no reason for the push for the non-electronic interaction. He should have realized it and stopped. I don't know how that sounds. He shouldn't have done it to begin with, but the push for the, like, I can't believe they actually got him to show up.
Yeah, pushing him to show up.
Are you insane?
Yeah,
like,
he should have bailed. There are still problems with this whole case for me, and I want to talk about it a little bit more. But like the first thing I want to say is, first of all, don't commit espionage. Just don't do it. But second of all, definitely don't violate the Atomic Energy Act. There's no good into you. Never it is not a television show that we live in.
Well, I don't know for certain that semantically he violated it. He certainly did in spirit, though. And I feel like that's kind of what they're going with here. But he's still got a case for any good defense attorney to make for him. But I didn't realize that spies signed up.
Oh, this is how they sign up. Yes.
Are you for real?
Yeah, this is it. This is the way it happens. But the thing is, most of the times nowadays, because of exactly what we're like kind of seeing unfold in this case, you're really just being put in prison. That's what's going. And this will never go to trial. He will end up taking a plea deal on this because they're going to scare the shit out of him.
Well, yeah, because espionage. I mean, they're looking, and so he drug his wife into it as well. She's charged as well, and I believe they're both looking at possibly life in prison. Because when you get to the level of espionage, or if you commit treason, I guess.
It's a national security violation. It can be treason, depending on how. When
you get to that point, it doesn't matter if, what he did was stupid, and it was in violation of, the spirit of being a United States citizen. But it was dumb. But it doesn't matter that it was dumb. You can go to jail for it for the rest of your life. So what I'm saying is, anytime you're violating, like the Atomic Energy Act says, that secrecy that you've been granted access to, you're looking at very harsh punishment because they're going to make an example out of you.
They have a very technical problem with this. I want to read a little bit more, then I'll tell you what the technical problem is. So it continues. So Alice discovers that, he's going to have to meet these guys, and he responds, Alice being Jonathan. On April 9th, 2021, he says, I'm sorry to be stubborn and untrusting, but I cannot agree to go to a location of your choosing. I got to consider the possibility that I'm communicating with an adversary who has intercepted my first message and is attempting to expose me. Would not such an adversary wish me to go to a place of his choosing, knowing that an amateur will be unlikely to detect his surveillance? If you insist on my physically delivering the package, then it must be a place of my choosing. I ask you to consider the viability of an electronic dead drop. I can establish an encrypted online storage account without providing any identifying information and without provoking any suspicion. Another possibility occurs to me. Is there some physical signal you can make that proves your identity to me? I could plan to visit Washington, D.C. over the Memorial Day weekend. I would just be another tourist in the crowd, but you could fly a signal flag on your roof. Something easily observable from the street, but nothing to arouse an adversary's suspicion. Okay, so this guy's just moved into like a Tom Clancy book.
Yeah, but they did it.
They totally did it. They totally did it. So 2 days later, on April 23rd, Bob, the UC, he responds and says, you do not need to apologize. We appreciate you being careful. That is much better than someone being reckless. Your thoughtful plans indicate you're not an amateur. This relationship requires mutual comfort. By the way, if somebody tells you you're not an amateur, you definitely are being set up by the U.S. government.
I would like to think I would have recognized that as well. It just seems like a lot of suck up.
Yeah.
They are like, the FBI has a tendency to over behavioral analyze situations.
Everything, yeah.
And they're like, okay, so this guy's looking to be like, he's got a hero complex, so let's make him think he's really good at it. That's what I imagine is happening there. Because the person could have said all that without saying, we appreciate you being secretive.
Well, they go on. They say this relationship requires mutual comfort. There is risk at both sides, and we understand your need for safety assurance of who you're communicating with. As you suggest, we can accommodate a signal in Washington, D.C. over the Memorial Day weekend. We will set a signal from our main building, observable from the street. It will bring you comfort with signal and display from an area inside our property that we control and not an adversary. If you agree, please acknowledge. We will then provide more instruction about the signal. We hope this plan will continue to build necessary trust and comfort of our identity. May 5th, John responds and says, I will make plans to be in the Capitol over the Memorial Day weekend. Be best to leave the signal invisible for the entire holiday weekend so I can pass by in the natural course of my tourist day. I may be on foot, passing by in a bus, car, or bicycle. Please plan something easy to spot. May 17th, Bob responds with a signal. We're happy to set a signal to bring you comfort and build necessary trust between us. The signal will be inside our main building from Saturday morning until Sunday evening, Memorial Day weekend. They don't tell us anything about what this was, but the gist is they place a flag between May 29th and May 30th at a location that's associated with Country One. So you're talking about like an embassy building or an office building. In an attempted effort to gain bona fides with Alice, they set all this up. This is insane, right?
Completely. I couldn't believe that they actually did it.
It's absolute crazy pants.
So the country is going along with this because, and when I say the country, I mean country number one. I was actually going to see if there wasn't some way we could look and see who had something weird out. But there's a lot of embassies. Actually, all the embassies are in Washington. To sort of see, because they give very specific details about that they did it, and he gives very specific instructions that make me think if I was driving around on Google, I could spot it. If it was like the right time.
If I had known about it Memorial Day weekend, I could have figured something out there.
Well, why would you know about it on Memorial Day weekend?
That's
if you're involved in the whole thing. It's so crazy to me because why would you think, okay, so for one thing, if the FBI has the information, because he wants to know that it's not the FBI and that it is for real this other country, right? So he says to them, all right, put the signal up for me, all right?
Right.
And so if they had so how would the FBI have gotten the information if the country hadn't given it to them? And how would the signal make any difference whatsoever, being that like the two countries are cooperating, right? Like the United States has an ally in this country, and the fact that there's an embassy in the United States for them to put a signal on, everything has changed so much since the Cold War. I mean, really, or whenever spies were, a big deal, because now we actually have people that just talk to one another and say, hey, can we have this information? And yes or no. And there's actually like a course that happens in normal communication. So anybody that wants to be a spy, you're probably not going to have a great gig.
I would agree.
Because, it's not as adversarial as it used to be. I think that with some situations it is, but it seems like a lot of countries, they have, everybody wants peace and they don't want countries to be at odds with one another. I have no idea who it is. Could you guess? Would you guess?
I looked for a number of signs. Here's where I started. I looked for countries where Monero would be used. Mm-hmm. In 2021, actually in March, unless you are a government person, they both South Korea and Australia delisted Monero. Basically, they said get these off of our exchanges for crypto coins unless you work for the government. So that made me think he was trying to use. I mean, it could be South Korea, it could be Australia in that instance. Australia's not an enemy, so that doesn't make any sense. I mean,
Well,
he would be a total idiot and have chosen an ally of some.
But the other thing is, it's translated, and Australians speak English.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's why I think I'm going to stick with. I think it's South Korea.
I think it's well.
Who else could it be? So
Well,
do you think it's China?
No, I don't. I think it's probably a little country in the middle of Europe who has absolutely no use for submarines. And
Oh, that would be brilliant, actually.
well, I mean, honestly, technology-wise, the United States is not the leader of the pack. I mean, we are to the extent that it's available and that people can afford it. I don't know that South Korea or China would need the plans.
Well,
I mean, I'm just saying there's a lot to be argued with whether or not, he's just a moron, or if he actually violated the Atomic Energy Act, because clearly I would love to know what country it is, because it just would make sense to me that somebody who had access to like highly classified documents that gave them to a country that sits in the middle of Europe and has no use for any sort of submarine situation. I think that would be great. The weird thing was, and so I saw something, and you probably saw it too. He had retired in like 2017.
but he has active clearances. I saw.
Yeah, but his clearances were activated at the end of, like, right before he did this. So he had them reactivated. And I wondered if there was a lookout because he did that.
Huh. Maybe it goes back and forth. He drops this off. He collects the first payment of $10,000. This is over the course of June. And June 26th at approximately 10:41 a.m., at a dead drop location they set up in Jefferson County, West Virginia, records show that Jonathan was observed making the dead drop, and they call him, at that time, a government employee working as a nuclear engineer for the United States Navy who holds a top secret security clearance through the United States Department of Defense and an active Q clearance from the United States Department of Energy. So I don't know what his current role would be.
I understand, and I read that as well. I then read that he had retired in 2017, and then I was confused.
Well, so his wife is a teacher, by the way. She was a faculty member and humanities teacher.
Quite prominent. She has a PhD in, I believe, anthropology from a prestigious school. And this has been a real blow.
Oh, yeah. Well, where they drag her into this is on that date and time when they observed him. So this is him basically doing the dead drop to start the process of being a spy. Like, this is his real, like, he started it all and made the offer, and now he's, got a little bit of money, and he's reaching out to give the first goods, the real goods. When he does this, they accuse her of being approximately 1 meter away from him while he's servicing the dead drop location. And the FBI agent swears that she appeared to be a lookout for him based on his experience. She goes ahead and then turns around and signals to him. So now not only has he gotten himself into this, he has now dragged his wife into what they're doing here. And basically, the two of them are trying to avoid surveillance. That's what it looks like. They were essentially, they'd gone on YouTube and read some MI6 manual or listened to some MI6 manual being read aloud from 1975. And they were conducting what they call surveillance detection routes, moving in a way to attempt to detect whether they're being surveilled or followed. Again, that only happens in the movies. You'll never know in real life. No one will.
She posted on Facebook that she needed a babysitter.
Wait, really?
For that time. Yeah. That it's in the complaint. that they followed
Wow.
her social media, and she had posted that she needed a babysitter like at the specific time that she ends up with her husband looking out for him. She even went back and changed it to asterisk found asterisk like after she got a babysitter.
She updated her social media spy post. Oh my God.
Unbelievable, because they're on the lookout for surveillance while they're and I hate to even say this kind of thing out loud, because I would totally do something stupid as well. That's why I'm never going to be a spy. But they're like on the lookout, but like they do stupid shit, like they post for a babysitter at the exact time, like on social media. Like that stuff can bite you. Like
Dear
it's
Lord.
insanity.
Well, so they continue going back and forth throughout June and into July, where Alice and Bob are talking, and he's providing documents multiple times. He has provided documents, and they're able to track them all back to the same version of a Mac operating system. These SD cards have metadata on them that he's not bothering to erase it in a way that, and he's using his own. Basically using his computer that he uses at home. So this makes them start investigating the couple, and she keeps coming with him. By the way, she keeps showing up, and the gist of this, after the June 26th dead drop, they determined that Jonathan had worked for the U.S. government since 2012, and he had worked in matters of naval nuclear propulsion from October 2012 to the present. He was currently assigned to the reactor engineering division of the U.S. Navy, and the U.S. reactor division is responsible for new and operating reactor plant noise and vibration technology, and for assisting with shock technology, design, manufacturing, and testing. He was assigned to the Bettis Atomic Power Laboratory, which is a U.S. government-owned research and development facility in Pittsburgh, or outside of Pittsburgh in West Mifflin. They work exclusively on designs for nuclear power for the U.S. Navy. During one of these assignments, he had access to the Navy information that is included on these SD drives and the physical letters that were initially sent. And here's the answer to our question. On September 28, 2017, Jonathan was released or discharged from active duty and maintained a reserve obligation termination date of July 23, 2020. The reason listed for his separation, which is your official leaving of the military, is that he had completed his required active service. But on March 25th, 2020, his TS clearance was renewed. So that's like right before his reserve obligation terminates. And that renewal was days before the April 1st, 2020 postmark date. That's going to be a different problem for him later, maintaining that clearance past it, because it would have been one issue if he didn't have the top secret clearance. It's a different issue if he does. They planned a July 31st, 2021 dead drop in Pennsylvania.
I just want to ask you, because I caught what you said. So is it better or worse?
It's so much worse.
For having the clearance?
Yeah. So having the clearance and doing this.
Because it seems like not having the clearance and doing it should be worse. Because you would have stolen something.
So having the clearance means that you've been trusted and vetted for having, particularly with the Q clearance with the Department of Energy, he's been vetted to a degree that he has read off. There's so much that goes into that part that you're told about when you're getting your clearance, that he's been warned of the penalties for what he's doing. And he did not give a couple of pictures and stuff. These are hundreds of thousands of pages he's passing over. And he's been going, he ends up going through like Tor networks to give them more information as they go.
There's a pretty specific sort of, well, it's redacted, but a pretty specific index.
Of what he did, yeah.
He tells them like everything he has available, and mentions that like he won't be getting additional information because he's retired or whatever is happening there. I find it very amusing. This is an exact example of what I don't want to happen to anybody ever. Like, because basically he wanted money, obviously. That's literally the only, I mean, it's not like he wanted the country to have access to nuclear submarines, okay? Because, like, why would he want that? It's stunning to me that a person with all the credentials that you were just talking about and all the clearances and everything, it's stunning to me that somebody like that wouldn't realize the implications of what they were doing. Because if he was actually giving the plans for something dangerous to our country, to another country that would use it against us, he would have so much blood on his hands if it came to fruition. Now, you know, that's a big stretch, right? From, you know, his reach out to, like, you know, half of the country getting blown away by a nuclear missile on a submarine. Okay, that's a big stretch, right? But think about that. That's literally what he's putting out there is, and he just wants money in return. And, like, not only does he just want money in return, he wants $100,000, but then he accepts 10.
Oh, well,
to start with, right?
Yeah, that's like the good faith gift. He asked for the 100 grand.
He's literally saying, it's almost like he wants them to be like, this is the FBI.
Oh yeah, he's baiting them and they're baiting him.
But it's not even baiting. Like, it's stupid, because why would you say your fears out loud like that repeatedly? Just stop. Because he's like, you know.
Well, that's why I said they're just like, if you say that to somebody, like, I'm scared I'm going to get caught and this is blah, 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 and you're my adversary, which, first of all, how is the FBI even your adversary? Like, saying all of those things, like, if somebody says back to you, no, you seem very professional, just let me go ahead and give you a clue. You're not, you're caught.
Stop now. And I don't want to give anybody any information, but, like, there was nothing about this that ever needed to be in person, ever.
No, none of this did. And he gets greedy. He's basically asking for about $5 million in cryptocurrency. If you break it out over what he's offering about 50 like sections. I don't like transactions or
it's kind of hard to tell because of the way it's redacted, but it's basically enough information for, he feels like it's valuable to them, I guess.
Yeah, he goes into this whole, he gets like real spycrafty, like in his mind, not in reality, but he goes into this thing about burner phones. The gist of this is the information he's offering, from what I can glean from everything they've released so far. And like you said, a lot of it's redacted. The bulk of this is bullshit. So July, August, September, he is, getting his electronic payments and he's giving up these documents. They're not like, they're really designs for how to secure nuclear materials on submarines for a number of reasons, some of which could be to avoid shock, to avoid contamination, to avoid dealing with the sort of the being underwater with all of this. At some point, they screw up one of the drops. They sit down and they end up arresting him in this year. This complaint was drafted on October the 8th of 2021. And this is something people need to remember. While all of this falls under conspiracy to violate the Atomic Energy Act with restricted data and instances of violating the Atomic Energy Act by giving a foreign nation restricted data, you have to remember that part of one of the major problems with the federal government, from my perspective, is none of this should have ever happened. We've talked about it before in how we have talked about crimes that are sort of thought crimes initially. Now, he has a problem, like in his case overall, he has a problem that he starts the sort of daisy chain that occurs here. This rabbit hole that he ends up going down, he starts it. He initiates it by apparently deciding that the best thing he can do is send a letter to Uzbekistan and offer their landlocked country information about submarines.
I don't know that that's for real. I just, like, the way this all went, I could totally see it being for real.
Oh no, I'm just saying, like, but this is what I really wanted to talk about this for. Is like my next question to you. Do you think that this is bullshit or no?
I feel like so I assume that you're headed down the path that everything should be wide open.
You mean like technology wise?
Well, because like as far as this never should have happened because everybody should have access to the information.
That's the first part of my theory on this.
I feel like, okay, so in a perfect world, sure. But, and you know, I don't know really. I know this isn't necessarily accurate, but it's how I've chosen to perceive things. The government works for us, the people, okay?
Right.
They are our servants. And I don't mean that in any sort of derogatory fashion, but I've had the unfortunate, experience of seeing how the government becomes this overbearing monster to the citizens, right?
Right.
And I've chosen to say, no, that is not the case. We need our government and they work for us, right? The issue becomes if everything is available to everybody, then why would any other country ever put any money into developing anything? Because, like, why should they? The United States will do it and everything's open, so we'll just get it from them. There is some value behind keeping something secret. Not to mention the fact that, in the event of a major conflict in the world, do you want everybody to be even? If it's out of your control, I mean, we don't want to start a war, but like, we're not going to be obliterated. In the secrecy of having this clearance, this top secret clearance, I feel like without that, and this is a pretty big assumption, actually. I mean, we could be really surprised, I guess, if there is nothing, right? But it seems to me like there's something because they're upset about nuclear storage on submarines. So while I do agree that it would be great if the government, the state, the country was just, a living, breathing entity on its own and there wasn't any human involvement, that's not the case because our government is simply a reflection of human beings doing the work that makes it, right? Thoughts and feelings and all kinds of stuff comes in. Like, for example, this case we just talked about. This guy saw a way where he had access to something that he thought he could make some money off of. Now, to talk to him, he might have a wide variety of reasons why he thought that.
Yeah.
I'm sure he probably did some of the work. He at least reviewed some of the work because I assume they've only got access to stuff they need access to. That's why it would be top secret clearance. Because of that, I walk a line because I do think it's going to be a whole lot of opinions as to like what is top secret, what should we have access to, what's fair. And you've said before that you get really aggravated and you feel like cases should be just wide open. We should have access to all the information in cases. And I do sort of agree with that. And then I sort of don't agree with that. And the problem is like, where's the line and who gets to decide, right? Because in my opinion, Amy Mihaljevic, they put all the cards on the table on her case recently on a TV show, Dateline or 2020, I'm not sure. And they said, this is everything we've got. Help us. And that was from 1989. So we're talking, 32 years? So It seems like, all in good time, it comes out. Back then, like, they didn't give all the information. They needed something to catch, they needed something to verify, or they needed something, an ace in the hole, basically. And I'm like, well, how'd that work out for you? What's the good of having an ace in the hole if you never get to play it? It's pointless. The key to that is having people in the positions that make the decisions that are capable of doing that. And because the way society is, and the fact that if you're just living your life, you don't give a crap about any of this stuff. We don't necessarily have people in positions that make the same decisions that we would make as far as like what's secret, what's released, what's available. You see what I'm saying?
You're not really wrong in what you're saying. Like there are some things, particularly here's my beef with this case. It's two parts. The first part is this is a 20-year-old submarine. This submarine, the Virginia-class submarines that they're talking about here, there's 19 of them. They were designed to replace fast attack subs, the Seawolves, the Los Angeles-class submarines. And those have basically started to be decommissioned, so this takes the place of it. This submarine is for stealth, and that's one of the big things that comes into play here is that by keeping the nuclear reactor active and silent or unable to be detected, it creates a better opportunity for stealth, which makes it excellent for intelligence gathering. This is also the submarine that eventually the U.S. Navy is going to attempt to mount a laser on. They have a high energy laser weapon that if you go through open source budget documents, this is the submarine that they are planning on putting a high energy laser weapon of some kind incorporated into the mast that's going to have a huge power output because of these 30 megawatt nuclear reactors that are in there. You know, I know a lot about it just reading about through the open source plans for it. You can go on and find out tons of information about these particular submarines. And I understand keeping some of the technical details under wraps because I couldn't tell you exactly how fast it goes. It's been rumored that it can go like 40, 45 miles per hour, which for a submarine is amazing. But I do, like off the cuff, I can go down and I can tell you that General Dynamics built it with Newport News Shipbuilding. I can tell you the length, the beam, the displacement, the payload. I can tell you that's got a crew of about 140 people. I can tell you a lot about this submarine. That's not my problem with this case. Here's where my problem comes in. First of all, you're right in a lot of ways. And, I know I have sort of when it comes to technology and it comes to crime, I have this sort of fast and loose way that I play with things where I do feel like most of it should not be secret. That's my personal opinion. And you're right, though. Some things probably about this should be, if they're classified or top secret or they require like a compartmentalized clearance, okay, fine. This guy, though, here's my problem with what they did to him. You don't belabor this. You found out from another country he's trying to sell secrets. You identify him through the course of 3 months of emails and the first dead drop. They continue to follow him for 6 months. And to see what else he's up to. They should have just arrested him on site and stopped there. Instead of having some major case built out of what is essentially a molehill, and in my opinion, yes, he needs to be tried. He needs to have his hands slapped. He needs to be fined. And he needs to be on some kind of government watch list where you watch him as people that will probably try and do something stupid for the rest of their life.
I don't think he
will. But you don't
again.
bait him into Oh yeah. He probably
Dude, he peed his pants when he was arrested. No kidding.
And so once that happens, once like he's arrested and his wife is arrested, and their lives, like no matter what direction you want to take this, their lives are now ruined. Nobody is going to hire the traitor, and nobody's going to hire the traitor's wife who was his lookout.
And
ever.
I hate that for them because I feel like they really didn't want this.
And I think the FBI gets off. Like that was a shot in the dark. They needed money for something. They needed something. They wanted, and they literally just threw a bunch of Hail Mary passes. And one of them happened to be spying on the U.S. in a capacity it's not really, at the end of the day, it's not that huge a deal. There are some issues with being able to build counter tech, like so that they could discover this class submarine as opposed to like have their own submarine. Like basically finding a way to detect this submarine would be a much bigger get for a foreign country.
Like, it doesn't really matter though. The point is somebody has made the decision that the content of these files is restricted. the decision was made by whomever was able to make that decision and have it stick. Because I could make the decision. I just don't think anybody would care because I'm not in any position to do that. Because it was made and he didn't have the authority to unrestrict it, it doesn't really matter what was on the documentation. Not to mention, it wasn't his to sell.
No, you're right. It is a theft. I agree with that.
It's a very, very sad thing. They've got 2 little children. I don't know if they're little, actually. They've got 2 children. Those kids are who are really going to suffer. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for the parents. I can understand people do desperate things sometimes. This is aiming really high, though. And, like, he should get, like, some sort of lenience just for, like, how ridiculously lame he was in his attempt to be a spy. And then they should be told not to be that way back, because you're right. Like, they did take it pretty far. I assume they were making the case. I also tell myself that we're giving him the opportunity to back out. Like, I know that's probably not true, but it makes me feel a little bit better. Like, maybe if he hadn't continued, it wouldn't have been enough. But, essentially from start to finish, the case doesn't change. Like, his wife is initially involved once the dead drop occurs. So it didn't really add or take away anything from it.
I actually just typed in while we're sitting here into the Justice Department search engine the name of the special agent whose last name is Von Tromp, Tromp. So I typed him into the search engine on justice.gov, and here's what pops up that's interesting related to some of what we're talking about here. On October 9th of 2020, he was honored at a special ceremony with FBI Special Agent Peter Olentis, IRS Special Agent Tammy Devericks, FBI Special Agent Jared Jankowski, and this guy, FBI Special Agent Justin Von Tromp. They were honored for working tirelessly on 2 cases involving Chinese nationals. Dr. King Yun Sun, a Chinese national, was employed by West Virginia University as a professor since 2001, contracted to the West Virginia Development Office with the West Virginia Department of Commerce to act as the governor's assistant for China affairs since 2008. Dr. James Patrick Lewis, an American citizen, was employed by WVU as a physics professor since 2006. The investigations involved countless hours of investigative work, hundreds of documents. Dr. Sun pled guilty to wire fraud in July 2020 and is awaiting sentencing in December 2020. Dr. Lewis pled guilty to federal program fraud in March 2021, was sentenced to 3 months of incarceration, fined $9,363 plus the cost of the incarceration, ordered to pay $20,000 in restitution to WVU. So there's your answer to country one is, because I'm going to bet that this guy's assigned to China. And that this guy tried to sell submarines to China.
Well, that would be logical.
I think this guy's just trying to sell the Virginia class submarines to China.
They don't
know what to
need
say
them.
about that.
That's crazy. They were, and see, I would want to know more about what was happening there too, because I don't know if you've ever looked at like government program funds. I swear some of the people who go to jail for like misusing them, they had no idea what they were doing.
Oh, they probably didn't even write the paperwork
because it's so complicated and it doesn't. And so as long as it's like a lot of money that it seems like somebody should have realized, like that's not supposed to go in your pocket, then that's fine. But like I see cases, being brought that I feel like are not justified. And, on a federal level, like what does my little one citizen and one state voice mean? Nothing, except, ultimately it is part of our government. The FBI is part of our government. And I feel like they have things that they need to concentrate on that aren't little petty financial matters, because that irks me. It doesn't sound like it was I hope it was more than $9,000. Because you said that it was like hundreds of hours and millions of documents and all that they worked on. Like, I really hope it, like, the restitution was not oh, wait, you said a fine.
$20,000 restitution. Yeah. Like, I have, Let me look up.
It
Kim
really
Young.
needs to be more than that, in my opinion. But you know what? I'm not the one making those decisions. So
Okay, so this is the outcome for that. December 4th, 2020, which is so I was looking at a document from October 2020. This is months later.
oh, I thought you said
Sun
2021.
20. Well, I'm talking about the West
Right,
Virginia
but was
professors.
that before or after? I thought it was like
It
the
was-
day
it would've been
after
going
these
on.
people got arrested or the complaint was filed, but it's a year earlier, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So Sun, King Young Sun, pleaded guilty to two-count information with wire fraud and filing a false tax return in July 2020. This is the guy that was the Chinese national employed by WVU who was working for Chinese affairs for the government. He was also employed by SinFuels Americas, which is an energy conversion tech company. His sentence, he was ordered to 4 months of home confinement, agreed to pay restitution in the amount of $6,200, and he was released from his employment at WVU, and he would be monitored as part of his sentence.
So what did he do?
This is the guy that did wire fraud.
Okay, but that's like literally
Um,
any sort of crime that involves communication at all.
So in 2000, so this is how it reads. Sun was a Chinese national employed by WVU as an associate professor and the associate director of the United States China Energy Center at the university. As part of his employment at WVU through the West Virginia Development Office, he acted as the governor's assistant for China affairs. He was employed by SinFuels Americas Corporation, an energy conversion tech provider of coal to liquids and gas to liquids processes, which is located in Sterling, Virginia, but headquartered in Beijing, China. From July 2011 to May of 2015, Peabody Energy Generation Holding Company, based in St. Louis, Missouri, paid consulting fees to Energy United LC, which is a consulting business that Sun had established in 2005. The scheme involved Sun's operation of his consulting business through Energy United. In 2015, Sun traveled to China on behalf of WVU and the West Virginia Development Office to prepare for an upcoming visit to China by WVU representatives to lead a West Virginia industrial delegation for a coal expo in Beijing. Sun booked both a coach flight and a business class flight for his trip, submitting a request for reimbursement to WVU for the coach flight and submitting a request for reimbursement to SinFuels Americas for the business flight. Sun only used the business class ticket for this trip. That's the first thing he's charged with. That's wire fraud. In 2014, Sun filed a joint income tax return with his wife, grossly overstating his business-related travel expenses when a large sum of those travel expenses were paid for using a state purchasing card with WVU or reimbursed to him by WVU and Peabody Energy. He also failed to state any financial interest in or authority over a financial account in a foreign country. Sun had an interest in numerous financial accounts in China. As part of the plea agreement, Sun has agreed to pay restitution in the amount of $6,233.12 to WVU. He's no longer employed there. Sun was also ordered to pay for the 4 months of home confinement monitoring as part of his sentencing.
Okay, so he...
This is the thing that the guy from the other case is being honored
but
for putting all these hours
I just
into
want to make
for
sure
other
I
years.
understand this. So he double booked his flight and was reimbursed twice. And he cheated on his taxes with regard to claiming business expenses that were paid by somebody else, which, you know, you're not supposed to.
Or he was reimbursed for one or the other.
Yeah. And then he was paying consulting fees to himself, and he's
not charged with that.
Well, you said it. I'm confused. So, and then was that not the wire fraud?
He had a financial, the wire fraud is the ticket thing that went back and forth.
I mean, okay, so yes, this is wrong. Okay, this is wrong. You should not do this. But is this something that the FBI tells you shouldn't do, or your mama?
That's the reason I'm pointing this whole thing out to you. All of this. So we went from espionage to this, but it's the same guy investigating both. That guy who had been investigating Sun for the last 3 years got really bored when China handed him this letter.
I don't know for sure that
stating
he would,
someone-
that this kind of investigation would have yielded him that kind of connection. This is. Do we care? Okay. Do you care about that? Do
About
you
any
think
of
that
this?
that man should be confined to his home for 4 months? I do not think. I feel like that's La La Land, and you shouldn't do that. And
Well, here's how cases like this fall for me. Usually, the level of investigation they're claiming they put into this, because you'll remember that just a minute ago, I read you that just searching the last name of the guy involved
Von Trump.
with Von Trump on the Justice Department website, I found where he was honored for, and I quote, working tirelessly on 2 cases involving Chinese nationals, King Yon-sung, and it doesn't say who the other national is, but it says that the other person is James Patrick Lewis. The investigation involved countless hours of investigative work and hundreds of documents.
Okay, well, I don't feel like there was a break-even point that was worth it there.
No, and so this is how I look at this. These cases are either complete nonsense or these people were doing so much worse and this is all they can get.
Well, and that should always be considered. However, I can't, that's endless possibilities. The case is what it is, and so countless hours, I don't know how many hours that is, but we're paying this FBI agent to work these countless hours. The government is paying him. The government is funded by our taxes. Our government's not good with money. I'm concerned that they might not understand why you wouldn't want to pay a guy $100,000 a year to get $6,000 back. I mean, I get that that's like a business point of view, and yeah, I get it. And, we're talking like a couple of guys here. And see, whose call is that to make? Well, the FBI agents are assigned task. Okay. I was looking to hear that this guy had like fraudulently taken hundreds of thousands to like over $1 million from some sort of government subsidy that was being given to the students at the school. Okay.
That's what people picture, but that's not what's
Right.
happening.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's what needs to be happening in order for like 6 agents to be honored for like shutting down the double seat buyer. Like, are you kidding me?
This guy was trying Why did he even buy the other seat?
Because he wanted to ride business class, but the university wouldn't pay for business class. Because otherwise he could have just turned both invoices in. But he didn't want to sit and coach, and that's the only thing that they would reimburse him for. Because
But then why even buy the coach at all? Why not just buy the business and have the other company?
He clearly doesn't realize that like by not buying it and not getting reimbursed, like it's literally like it didn't happen at all. Just like by buying it, not using it, and getting it reimbursed is like completely like he didn't gain anything from that.
We're banned in China now. They're never going to let people listen to our podcast.
Hey, that's fine. I mean, I'm sorry, but you do see what I'm saying, right? Like he didn't actually need the coach seat. He could have just not gotten it, and he would have literally been in the same situation, except he wouldn't have committed the fraud or the wire fraud.
Yeah, that's the wire fraud.
And the reason being because it's funny, wire fraud is huge, really, really overused. But it's a fallback. And see, I see the conundrum being the fact that somebody that the people we've put into power thought this case warranted attention from FBI agents. And in my opinion, they could have absolutely, charged him, convicted him, but countless hours? I mean, what were they doing in those countless hours?
So if they lie in a press release that they put out about the number of hours put into a case, is that wire fraud?
Until there's a new
Okay.
generation that comes in and then they're like, hey, the law's applied to you. Because literally, like, we can talk about this all day long, but here's the thing. When it comes down to it, it's really about somebody making a decision right there in front of you. Like, oh, can I have this
Yeah.
record? And the person says, no, you can't have it. It's classified. And you're like, oh, okay, well, here's $100. And they're like, oh, look, I just left it sitting there. It literally boils down to who has what you want and their wiggle room. The problem I saw with the whole situation with Mr. Tubb was that he offered something that he thought they might want, but clearly they didn't want it. And that seems like where it all started going wrong.
Well, that's sort of my point. If they come back and not only do they not want your information, but they just give it back to your government, and the Chinese government, if that's who it is, they might not have even known they were getting him in trouble. They might have been like, so your guy left this. We don't know what to do with it. You might want to take this.
And I know, we'll never know what happened in between there. But
in
this
this
is right on
instance,
par with treason is wrong. This guy should not have been. He should not have been giving anything to anybody. Okay.
Espionage is generally criminal, and we pay people to do that
Right,
too.
but see, it doesn't apply in that case. But my point is that, it seems about right that the same agent was on both cases. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you for joining us. We are sponsored by LabbratiCreations.com. You can check them out at LabbratiCreations.com, and you can still use the code CRIMEXS for a fun pop pet portrait of your own pet. You can also reach us on Twitter, Instagram at TrueCrimeXS, or you can give us a call if you know anything about any of the cases that we're talking about at 252-365-5593. You can also reach us at Gmail at truecrimexs@gmail.com, and you can check out our website at www.truecrimexs.com. We'll see you next time.
This is True Crime XS.
I had no home to rely on, driving around in a passenger van, dreaming of when I'd ever begin to start my life. That's when I moved to the city to be on the stage, but the curtain had closed. You walked in the room, and that's when I knew that I was home, and my life will begin. Didn't believe it was true till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Had no direction to move till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. couches and wine, and everything's fine. Just one day at a time, and it gets you by. I didn't believe it was true till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Had no directions and moved till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Somebody like you. Somebody like you. I was just fading away till I met you. I was just notes on a page till I met you. I never imagined the day when I'd meet somebody like you. Couldn't believe it was true till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Somebody like you. Somebody like you. I didn't believe it was true till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Had no direction